Okay, so welcome everybody back to our mindful clinician session. And today, I'm going to talk about moral pain. Sometimes we might call it moral injury. And this is something that I think is so relevant to our work as helping professionals. Um, Moral pain and moral injury are a form of burnout, but when we talk about burnout, we're sometimes not being really clear about what that is. And moral injury and moral pain is something that can certainly contribute to burnout, but it's actually its own thing. And so I think it's important to name and discuss it as its own kind of experience and entity. So, when we think about moral pain, we're not talking just about stress in our work. We're not talking even just about compassion fatigue. That's something else as well. Moral pain is something deeper. And perhaps you've experienced this if you're sitting with a client or finishing a shift, and you just have that feeling of like, this doesn't feel good enough, or I know what this person needs, but I can't, for whatever reason, provide that. Or just something about this doesn't sit right with me as a helping professional, right? These can be the signs of moral pain. And when this experience repeats over and over again, and we don't have the space to process and acknowledge it, it can turn into moral injury. So, moral pain can happen when we can't act in line with our professional or personal values, or if we're required to act in ways that conflict with those values. So, in our professional world, this could look like discharging someone when we know that they're not safe, or ticking boxes on a risk assessment that doesn't really reflect reality, or offering a level of care that we know won't actually change anything, but it's kind of all we've got. Or sometimes even managing risk in a way that protects a service or an organization, but not necessarily the person. Now, sometimes we might think about these things as, pressure at work, but it goes deeper than that. This is a values violation. And for clinicians and helping professionals, especially those who care deeply, which is most, I would say, the vast majority of helping professionals, this can really cut right down to our sense of purpose, even our sense of identity. And that's why moral injury can be so significant, and we want to watch out for it. Um, I thought it was appropriate maybe just to share a little bit of my own experience with this. Um, I started out my career in public mental health, so emergency departments, community mental health teams, inpatient units. I really loved that work. I loved the pace, I loved the complexity of acute care. I learned so much about mental health and psychiatry over those years. And most of all, I really loved the people I've worked with, the clients and the other staff. But alongside this was another reality that I experienced, which was really chronic inefficiencies within the system, a lot of wasted time and money, in my humble opinion, politics that sometimes made it impossible to get anything done, having to run the most basic decision through 15 committees, and higher up positions making clinical protocols with almost no understanding of the reality of care. And I'm sure as helping professionals, you have experienced some of this within the systems in which we work. And to be frank, sometimes I saw things that went beyond just inefficiencies. Honestly, sometimes I experienced things that felt a little bit like blatant corruption. Decisions being made that clearly were not about clients, risk being minimized in a way that didn't match reality, or pressure to move people through systems because of bed flow or other priorities rather than clinical need, or opportunities to advocate that were subtly or overtly shut down. And I know for me, sitting in rooms, in meetings, sometimes high level meetings where this was going on, and really feeling the struggle with that. And a feeling of, is this really okay? And even worse, a feeling of like, what role am I playing in this? Particularly, I guess, as if you get up into those higher roles. And this is where it goes beyond just a frustration with the systems that we're working in. Um, and it starts to develop sometimes into anger, disillusionment, a sense of our own practice and values being compromised. And we might start to ask ourselves some really serious questions like, is this the kind of system I want to be a part of? Now, for me, the answer eventually to that was no, which is why I moved into private practice. But I still have to work within systems that, I still feel those values clashes with, Medicare, some of the NDIS stuff that goes on, lots of different things that can, create this sense of values clash. Now, often as helping professionals, we can get very good at pushing through, being pragmatic, working within the system. And we do need to bring some radical acceptance to systems are what they are. But internally, there can be a cost if we're doing a lot of just pushing through, and that can really accumulate. So, moral injury isn't just one moment or necessarily one experience. I mean, it could be if it was significant, but often it's the build-up of moments like this that stay unresolved, unprocessed, and often just unacknowledged. And so over time, we might notice things happening for us, like cynicism starting to creep in, or we could find that we're pulling back emotionally from our work or from our clients or from our teams. We could start to feel numb, detached, losing a sense of meaning in the work, losing enthusiasm for the work. We could even start to feel like we're failing. We could feel guilt about outcomes or extreme anger and frustration. I know that was something that came up for me a lot. And we might start to call this burnout, but burnout is often talking about a capacity depletion. Moral injury is actually more about a values conflict. And if we don't label it right, if we don't like know what we're dealing with, then we won't respond to it effectively. In DBT therapy, we talk a lot about when emotional pain exceeds our capacity, we go into crisis mode, right? That's what we see. Um, but what happens when it's the systems that are creating pain and we don't have an opportunity to process or understand it? Then we might suppress, disconnect, or just get really good at functioning, but not being really present. Or maybe we start to notice we're just counting the hours till we can go home and forget all about work. Um, there's some risk involved in those approaches. And thinking about what we teach our clients is the opposite of that. What we teach our clients about dealing with difficulty is to build awareness, to validate the difficulty, to create space to emotionally process the difficulty. So there's an opportunity here to really ask ourselves if we're experiencing moral pain or moral injury, are we building awareness around it? Are we validating this for ourselves? And are we giving ourselves space to really process and understand what's going on? Now, some clinicians might say, well, this is just part of the job. And that is true. Some of it is. But if we try and somehow minimize moral pain, we don't become more resilient. We just become more disconnected. And again, that can show up in our work, our teams, but deeper, our sense of meaning. And our focus can shift from I care deeply and I want to help towards more of I just need to get through the day, right? And I don't think any of us want to be there every day, just trying to get to 5 o'clock. So, what can we do? We can't always fix a system, although we should keep trying. but we can stop abandoning ourselves within it. Moral pain is something we feel. It's in our bodies, and we want to process and acknowledge it. So today we're going to practice a rain practice. Now, some of you may have done this kind of practice before. Rain is a mindfulness practice that allows us to turn towards discomfort, inner conflict, stuckness, all of the stuff surrounding moral injury and moral pain is wonderful to work with from a rain perspective. So that's what we're going to practice today. For our practice, I'm going to ask you to bring to mind something in your life currently that is not sitting well with you. Now, it doesn't have to be work related, but it definitely could be. Something that's causing you worry, discomfort, anger, frustration, something that's just like, oh, this is really uncomfortable. Perhaps it's a situation where you're battling with, this isn't how it should be. It may be involve people who are doing things that maybe they shouldn't be doing. Um, don't choose something that's a 10 out of 10 on your distress scale, but we could comfortably go to something that's a 7 or an 8 today. So something that definitely has some yuckiness attached to it. So again, it could be a person, a situation, something that's happened, or something that's happening or coming up, but something that's got some struggle in it. So I'm going to give you a minute to think about something you're going to choose to work with today in that sort of category. And then I'm going to show you, I'm going to talk you through first our RAIN steps. And then you'll have a sense when I'm guiding you through it, you'll have a really good sense of where we're going. So bring up this visual for you. Now, the RAIN structure that I am using today comes from Tara Brach and Jack Cornfield. And there's been some changes to this structure. If you have done RAIN before, you might notice some differences from a few years ago. But these are the steps of RAIN. So the first one, and so in our guided practice, I'm going to be guiding this, but this is just to give you an overview of where we're going. The first step, the R stands for recognize. This is where we're going to just notice with the situation that you've chosen, what's there, what's going on. We're just going to name to ourselves what's happening. The second step is allow. Now, this is where we do something that seems very counterintuitive, but we actually give up resistance to the discomfort, right? This is where we allow that to really be there. And sometimes this is the most powerful step, is just the giving up resistance to it, really allowing ourselves to be with it. The I stands for investigate. So this is where we're just going to, kindly investigate. What is this about? Are there different layers to this? Is there some other stuff going on here that I want to recognize? And then the final step is nurture. And nurture is where we bring compassion to this experience. Okay. Now, if you've done RAIN before, the N used to be non-identified. And the I used to be investigate with kindness. It's all the same stuff. They've just kind of moved it around a little bit. All right. And then after the RAIN, we often just give ourselves some moments to see what it feels like to then be sitting in that space. So these are the steps that I'm going to guide you through. There's a Buddhist story that goes with this practice that I always like to tell, because for me, it really helps me connect with this practice a little bit more deeply. So I'm probably going to massacre this story, but I have adapted it over the years because to make sense. But there's different variations of this story. But basically, for any of you that know a little bit about Buddha and Buddhism, so Buddha was apparently this guy who, reached enlightenment sitting under a tree, right? But even after Buddha reached enlightenment, allegedly, he was still visited by unpleasant emotional states. So fear and pain and sadness and grief and all of these things because humans, right? In the story, and in Buddhist stories a lot, they have a term, they have a little character actually called Mara. Now, Mara can represent lots of things, but in my mind, Mara sort of represents the dark, scary, difficult, painful parts of human experience, the stuff that we often want to ignore and get away from, right? And so in this story, Buddha is still visited by Mara even after reaching enlightenment. And Mara again brings, all of those yucky, difficult parts of being human, pain, sadness, grief, suffering, all of that. But in this story, Buddha is, giving a talk to, lots and lots of people. He's up on a stage giving a talk. And as he's talking, his most trusted aide, Anand, comes up next to him and whispers in his ear. And he says, Buddha, I think Mara is here. Now, this was Anand's way of saying that he felt a shift in the energy, that something difficult had started to arise. And Buddha said, Yep, yep, I feel that. That's okay. Let's just keep going. And so he kept talking, he finished his talk. And as the crowd is dispersing, in the picture, it shows this little depiction of Mara, which is this little black, furry, little devilly dude, right? This little critter, kind of skulking around the back and coming down the side as people are spreading out. And Buddha sees Mara and he says, Mara, I see you. And he says, Come, let us have tea. And he invites Mara down. They sit down, and Buddha says, Why are you here? What is it you're trying to tell me? Is there a message that you bring? Now, this is what rain is. The idea that we are recognizing the difficult, right? So the Mara, I see you. Whatever the Mara is for you, whatever that difficulty is for you, Mara, I see you. Come, let us have tea. It's actually more than that. It's inviting it in like an old friend. It's sitting down with this difficulty and really getting to know what it's about with no resistance. So we can see the allow and then the investigate. Why are you here? What are you about? What are you trying to tell me? Right? But throughout this process, there is a separateness. So I'm sitting with this experience, but I am not the experience, right? I'm sitting with these thoughts, feelings, images, but I am not these thoughts, feelings, and images. This is what used to be called non-identified, the idea of being with an experience with full awareness, with no resistance, and still being able to sit in a very safe place to observe and notice what's happening. And then when we choose to, we step out, right? So this is what I want you to think about as we do this practice, this idea of look at it, name it, invite it in, have tea with it, right? And really get to know what this is about. And what we'll start to notice is often a softening, a releasing, maybe a little bit less stuckness, a little bit less struggle, maybe a little bit less self-criticism and self-punishment, right? This is what we're going for. Okay? Any questions about that before we get into the guided practice? All right. Let's go ahead and get comfortable. So choosing a posture for yourself that is alert but relaxed, letting your body be supported by your chair or the floor beneath you. And if you'd like, you can gently close your eyes or simply soften your gaze in front of you. And let's just take a moment to arrive. Noticing the simple rhythm of your breath. No need to change it, just allowing it to be as it is. You might notice the inhale and the exhale, and letting your body begin to slow, even just a little. Just settling in as you sit here. Nowhere else to be. Nothing else that needs your attention right now. Just simply giving yourself the next block of time to sit. Now, gently bringing into your mind a situation that has some struggle around it. Something that's holding a sense of discomfort, unease. Perhaps something where your values and reality are just not lining up. And just allowing this situation to be present in your awareness. Perhaps you find an image in your mind that represents this situation, and allowing yourself to be right in it. And as you bring this into your mind, gently asking yourself to recognize what is happening inside of me right now. What's here with this situation of difficulty? Perhaps silently naming what you notice. Frustration, anger, sadness, helplessness, guilt. Seeing if you can describe and recognize to yourself what this is like. No need to analyze it, just recognizing what's here. You may notice sensations in your body connected to this. Just recognize those. Tension, heat, heaviness. Recognizing the full experience of this. What is it like? Without judgment. Just recognizing the difficulty. As we recognize, let's just move now into really allowing ourselves to fully be with this experience. You may notice a natural impulse to push it away, minimize it, analyze it, solve it, and just giving up any and all resistance to it. Allowing it to be with you as big as it wants to be. Using your breath to encourage yourself just to allow, to invite it in for tea. Perhaps saying something to yourself like, "This is my experience," or "This belongs." Allowing doesn't mean that we agree with it. We're simply giving up the fight with it for a few moments. Letting it be here without the need to fix it. You may notice as you allow, certain sensations may shift and change, or they may not. But if you do notice a shift, just noticing that as you really let go of resistance, is there a shift? Now, with a gentle curiosity, let's explore this experience even more deeply. We might ask ourselves, is there a meaning I'm putting to this experience? Am I making it mean something about myself? Am I making it mean something about others? Am I making it mean something about the world? We may notice perhaps a sense of responsibility or pressure to figure this out, to fix it. We may notice self-criticism. I should have done better, or I should have done different, or maybe something even as harsh as I'm not doing it right. I'm failing. I feel out of control, or I'm stuck. If you notice as you investigate any of that self-criticism or harshness, you might like to just place a hand somewhere on your body, perhaps over your heart or over your belly, and perhaps give yourself some reassuring words, perhaps just something like, "I'm here," or "I'm doing the best I can." Perhaps just asking what this part of you most needs to hear. As you sit in the struggle and the difficulty, what does this part of you most need to hear? And imagine sending those words through your hand into your heart. We move now into a sense of nurture, a sense of care, not fixing or solving the problem, but offering something kind to yourself. Something like, "Of course, this is hard," or "It makes sense you feel this way." Letting those words land not just in your mind, but in your body. Flowing into the areas of discomfort. You may even feel connected to say something to yourself, such as, "You are loved. You are worthy. You are enough." And just staying here for a few moments, offering yourself the same validation and care that you might offer to someone else struggling. And if you're struggling to find those nurturing words, perhaps imagine what you would say to someone else. And try on those words for yourself. Send them into your heart. We'll sit like this for another minute or so. Now let's gently let go of this specific scenario or difficulty that we've been working with. And simply resting, we call this after the rain. Being in your body, awareness of your breath, awareness of your body in space, and just noticing what's here. What's it been like to do this practice? And noticing that we are not our emotions. We are not our thoughts. We're not even our physical sensations. There's a separate sense of us that can notice this experience and hold it with safety and confidence. Letting everything be just as it is. And as we come to a close on this practice, giving yourself some validation for being willing to turn towards what's difficult today, to invite in the Mara that is there in your life at the moment, to sit with it, to process it, to feel it, to acknowledge it. Giving yourself some credit for doing this work for yourself. You might like to now start to add some movement in your body, perhaps wiggling fingers and toes, bringing your attention back into the room you're in, noticing sounds around you, contact with your chair, perhaps allowing one lovely cleansing breath as we finish. And just noticing if anything feels different now, even slightly. And if your eyes are closed, you can go ahead and open them. Coming back to the group.